Morning. Edward's out of town this week, so we need to fill in for him. Let's begin with a moment of prayer, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, for the chance to sing, to pray, to gather around the table and celebrate your love for us. Help us always to be mindful of the wonderful riches that you've blessed us with, even just the fellowship of the place that we're in. We can worship together. I ask you to open our hearts now as we study your word. That you would guide us and lead us as we try to grasp some things and understand some things about you. Use me and use your Spirit to work on our hearts. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. This morning's sermon is entitled, If I Were a Rich Man. And don't worry, I'm not going to break out and dance and we're playing a fiddle. I thought about asking Devin to do that. He'd be a much better fiddle player than I, but we won't get in trouble and distracted with that. I do want to raise a question for you, though. I want us to start off and get your feedback on it. If you had $1 million, what would you do? You had $1 million. You yell out. That's okay.
Retire.
Retire. Okay. Yeah. You can't retire, Anita. We need you. Sorry, don't give her $1 million, please. If you had $1 million, what would you do? Okay. What would you do with $1 million? You don't have to spend it all, even. I mean, what would you? If you had a bunch of money, what would you do? Huh? Travel. Any place you want to go specifically? Go to the ocean where it's warm. Not Antarctica. There's an ocean down there too, you know. Where would you? $1 million. What are you going to do? Young people, what would you do with $1 million? Invest it. Okay. Something to think for the future. Buy a car. A real nice car. Yeah. It wouldn't drive too fast so you wouldn't get a ticket, right? If you had $1 million, what would you do? Give it away. Okay. I want to be your friend, by the way. $1 million. Dave, what would you do with $1 million, man? Give some of it away, at least. Right? I'll be honest. I mean, I'd give some away. I would. But I got a list of things I wouldn't mind doing with $1 million. Don't we all would? It's interesting that there was a song done, for those of you who remember way back in the late 80s, that was done by our band. If I had $1 million, they came out and they had a list of things. If I had $1 million, I'd buy me a house, a furniture like a Chesterfield or an ottoman, a K car, a tree fort, a tiny little fridge to put in the tree fort with pre-wrapped sausages. I'd buy a fur coat, but not a real one because that's cruel. An exotic pet like a llama or an emu. The remains of John Merritt, who's the elephant man. I don't know, I don't understand that one either, but that's weird. Buy fancy craft dinners with fancy ketchup. A green dress. Some art like a Picasso or Garfunkel. Maybe I'd buy monkeys, but they said in one of the song. Then they close it by saying, I'd buy you one of those. Interesting what you did with $1 million. But they end the song with the phrase, if I had $1 million, I'd be rich. It's interesting to think about that because many of us don't think of ourselves as rich. There was an interview that I read not too long ago, that was several years ago, that was done by a guy who was a missionary in Papua New Guinea. And in that interview, he asked the people that he worked with, and he was intentionally working in an area that was impoverished in that nation. He was down there between 2006 and 2012, and he asked them in this survey a number of interesting questions. He asked them, first off, he asked them, what must a person accumulate to be considered to be rich? They didn't answer. They were kind of shy in their interview. So finally asked them, what about me? Am I rich? And they all kind of grinned and didn't say anything as they looked. And all of a sudden, finally, they all said, of course she's rich. Well, so what makes me rich? What do I have that makes you think I'm rich? And they paused and finally one of them answered, said, your skin color. You're white. Probably you, that makes you rich. More than likely you are. So he wanted to dig deeper with them, and he asked them, says, what do I have that makes you think I'm rich? And beyond the skin color, they said, you have a job. You have a car. You shop for food whenever you want to. You have a house with lights and a house that's not made from material taken from the bush. You don't worry about tomorrow's needs so much. You have pride. With pride, the person has confidence and happiness. You have knowledge. You're rich. And he asked another question that said, if you had to choose to be rich or poor, what would you choose? And then the people he asked, about 50% of them said, I choose to be poor. What are some advantages to being the world's poor? No fear of robbery, freedom of time, no worries about your property. You can live at peace. You don't have to worry about rest. You can rest good and don't have to think so much. Rich people have so much on their minds. What are the disadvantages of being the world's poor? You can't travel and see other places. You can't get a good education. Lack of money for things like school and food. City life is hard. You don't get paid enough to meet the needs of your family. You can't meet your needs. You worry about what you eat and what you're going to wear every day. Or health care. That's another thing to talk about. Then he asked them, he says, how much of their income do they spend on food? Which is kind of interesting because Dave Ramsey, who's kind of the financial guru, he says that you should budget between 5 to 15% of your income on food. You know how much they said they spend on their income on food? 98%. Almost everything they have. They live off the brush, or they live off whatever they have to. They aren't paying money for cars. They aren't paying money for so many things that you and I spend money on without even thinking. They don't have to pay for cable bill. They have to buy food. That's their priority. And then they don't have enough money for that because they're poor. Then he asked, the last question says, what things would you say are luxuries? TV is a luxury according to them. A vehicle is a luxury. A stove and a fridge is a luxury. Electricity is a luxury, according to them. Clean water is a luxury. Rings, jewelry, expensive cell phone. Things in the house like a toilet and running water, they saw as luxuries. A good house, which was defined by a house with an iron roof, not made with leaves and trees. Air conditioning in the office, they were pointing to the camera, I guess, on that. Yeah, you evidently had an office with air conditioning. That makes you rich. Cupboards, tables. Your kids have an education. That makes you rich. If I were a rich man, when we raise that question, it really does, it sets us, I really have to stop and go, from what perspective am I talking about? Now, I may not be rich by American standards, but by worldwide standards, I have to be really honest, I am a rich man, am I not? If I want to go, today I'm not worried about what I'm going to eat for lunch. culture and maybe people here that you do worry about day-to-day needs, but let's be honest, we're rich. The fact that you got here somehow, said you were able to come here. The fact that you live in a place that you're not worried about freezing to death, or that you have resources. I'm just sitting here watching this. It's so funny. During the communion, I was sitting there, pick on you down here. Grant, or not Grant, but little Lucas, couldn't think of his name, was sitting on their lap, and I opened my eyes during the prayer for just a second. And Lucas had cookies, and they were in a bag, and the poor little kid was trying to get to the cookies. It was sealed up, and he was just gnawing at the plastic bag trying to get to the cookies. But the fact that the kid had cookies says he's rich, right? Even though his parents are depriving him of them by putting them in a bag and taunting him with it. You can see he was getting frustrated too. I was like, I can't start laughing here. This is hilarious, though. Kids starving, wanting to cook before the, we need to feed that one more, you know that. But we joke about it, but the fact that our kids come to church with cookies, we're rich, aren't we? And then I come to this text that I want us to spend a few minutes studying, and that's in James chapter 5, verses 1 through 6. Because he starts off this section, and get some context with James. James has been talking to the people here, and he's been going on and on about how they are brothers. He talks to them, you're my brothers, and he says that like 11 times in the text. And all of a sudden he comes to this section, and he drops the gloves. And he just looks at them and says, now you rich people. And he chews them out. He reads into them here in the text. And let's read this little section here and look at it for just a minute, because there's a few things I want us to bring out, and then we'll be done. He says, now listen, you rich people. Weep and wail because of the misery that's coming to you. Your wealth has rotted, and moths have eaten your clothes. Your gold and silver are corroded. Their corrosion will testify against you and eat your flesh like fire. You've hoarded your wealth in the last days. Look, the wages you failed to pay workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you. The cries of the harvester are reaching to the ears of the Lord Almighty. You have lived on earth in luxury and self-indulgence. You have fattened yourselves in the day of slaughter. You're condemned and murdered the innocent. He doesn't oppose you. Now, he starts it off here, and I want you to hear it here. He talks about the impending judgment that's coming. He says that there's going to be weeping, that there's going to be wailing going on. He says that misery that's later there is going to become. He even talks about how there's going to be a day of slaughter. So when he starts off this and he looks at it, you rich people, it's like brace yourselves because you've had your fun, now it's time to pay for it. Well, what did we pay for? What fun did we have? He names for them four things. First one he names, you have hoarded your wealth. Hoarding your wealth is money and commodities, both that's implied in that text. So much that your wealth has begun rotting away, if you're wasting away. But you've got so much stuff, you don't know what to do with it. Does that describe our culture? We live in a rich culture. If you question that, try to ask Jordan how much stuff he gets in the thrift store every day. We have so much stuff, we're giving it away so they can sell it. And then what's ironic is then we go shopping at thrift stores so we can buy more. Which is good. It helps Mountain State, so do that. Yeah, that's good. Not discouraging this, but I'm just saying, just realize how much wealth we have, don't we? My wife and I, we went through this. She was reading this book over the summer about clearing out your clutter. And we decided we're going to get rid of some clutter. And honestly, we got rid of a bunch of stuff and we could never tell it was gone. We live in a wealthy society. And that hoarding our wealth. I remember when my kids were little, I never had money in my wallet. And so what I started doing is, I wouldn't tell anyone, but I'd take a $20 bill and hide it in my wallet. They got word of that, and all of a sudden it was, hey Dad, I need some money. Hey Dad, into your emergency stash. And once they knew I had that money, I didn't have any money anymore. I still keep a $20 stash in my wallet, just so you know. Actually, there's two now, but there's that sense I don't want to feel like I don't have money. And maybe there's nothing wrong with that, but there becomes, this whole builds up to an attitude, and all of a sudden we start hoarding our stuff and gathering our stuff, and we really do, we become rich people. And again, the warning that he puts on the beginning of this text, the harshness that he speaks, I have to go with conviction here and go, man, I've got too much stuff. Second thing he says to them is, he talks about unpaid wages in there. He talks in there in the verse, he says, look at the wages you failed to pay. Evidently, the situation that was going on is they owed people some money and they were trying to be shrewd about their money. And they weren't paying what they owed. You see, there's an attitude that comes in here where we can justify what we're doing, and all of a sudden we're not paying people what they owe, or we're trying to be dishonest in the way we do our business. Like my grandpa, he died when I was 16 years old. He was a businessman. He wasn't much of a Christian. I've got to be honest. He really didn't look like a Christian. And he would run his business, and a couple of times I caught him doing some stuff, and he was, Grandpa, this isn't being honest. I was like 15, 16 years old, and he said, this is business, you be quiet. And we can begin justifying things, because we're doing business now, but we're not, that's different from being a Christian. And all of a sudden, we recognize we're being rich people, and God's going to bring judgment. When people do things, when we agree to pay some money, what do? I don't care if it's the government. We don't cheat them. We're honest in our dealings with people. You pay them what is owed. The third thing he rebukes them for. And this one gets a little personal. He talks about the luxury and self-indulgence. In the Greek, the word luxury has to do with comfortable things, whereas the indulgence has to do with self-indulgence and being wasteful in things. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with being comfortable. You come to my house, I've got a chair, and I got a spot where I always like to sit. And I always sit there. Why? Because it's comfortable. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you come to my house, you're welcome to sit there. I'll just kind of glare at you for a minute. I'm just kidding. I'll let you sit in my spot. But isn't that how many have a lazy boy? That's Dad's chair and everyone knows it? You have that at your house? Are we the only one? I'm messed up. No one's raising their hand, man. We have Dad's chair. You can sit in Dad's chair. That's Dad's spot, right? And he's comfortable. He knows where he is. He put his coat right there, and he can sit there, and the remote's nearby. We like that comfort, don't we? But we like to be pampered too, don't we? Anything wrong with that? But when we begin, that becomes our lifestyle, and that drives us. We're rich. Hence the statement, filthy rich. Because it becomes wasteful, and it's not for God's glory, it's not to help other people. We're becoming selfish and self-indulgent in what we're doing, and that luxury and self-indulgence becomes evil. And that's where we have to stop and go, I am rich. And that rich is corrupting me, and that rich is messing with me. And instead of being a person who loves other people and loves God, what am I doing? It's all about me, and I become selfish. I can justify bad behavior by that. And that's where it becomes so dangerous. The fourth one, he says, you murder the innocent. It's interesting, that phrase in that text. You take the idea is they must have, the context is that you must have condemned or murdered someone that really wasn't even opposed to you. You're using your money as power. You're using your money for selfish purposes to hurt other people. Now, I read this text, and we don't know exactly what was going on with the people James was writing this book to. But we do know this. He was very harsh about rich men. And even though they were brothers, he comes down on them very severely. As I read this text, I have to ask myself, am I a rich man? And then I have to stop and go, yeah, I am. Some of you know this, about a few weeks ago, it was about 6 weeks ago, very quickly, we decided, I'm tired of living in a house without air conditioning. We've lived for 8 years with a house without air conditioning. I'm tired of sharing the bathroom with my wife. Call me selfish, but yeah. And so we decided we're going to start looking to buy a house. And I don't know if you realize it, but the market right now is crazy with house buying. And then we went through this sticker shock where we were going, man. And Shelley Cruz was very patient with us, and she was our realtor. But it was scary looking at the houses around here and how expensive they are. And I guess, and as I read this text here, I'm going, I'm a rich man, and what am I doing? Is this all about self-indulgence? Is this all about comfort? Yesterday, or yesterday was Friday, we closed on a house. We're moving to Firestone, by the way. And we're excited. We really are. We're overjoyed by this. I have to share the bathroom. Yes. Like I say, it sounds silly, but that's where I go. Am I being silly here? I'm a rich man. And so as I've been looking at this text recently, and I'm thinking, man, this house is nice. It's got 3 bathrooms, not just 2. We don't even need 3. There's only 2 of us. It's got air conditioning, by the way. I don't do well in the heat. Winter is my favorite season. For those of you who groan and moan about wintertime, I'm sorry. In the summertime, I bite my lip when you're going, isn't it beautiful outside? I'm thinking, I hate this weather. I love snow. And so when the summer comes and I'm having to sit there under a fan because it's 75 degrees in the room, I'm going, I'm dying. It's hot in here. And so for me, an air conditioning is one of those, yeah, that's a big deal. There's cool money tricks in Firestone. For those of you who know that about me. I'm excited about this. New places to run. I'll get to live near Aaron's Spawn, man. I'll be cool with you. See? We'll be just a couple miles away. I mean, all these things, but we're chewing through this, and I'm going, okay, Lord, am I a rich man? Are you calling down judgment on me? In some ways, I think he is. But it comes down to, when we look at this text, we start asking ourselves these questions. Am I a rich man? I am a rich man, so what am I going to do? Am I hoarding my wealth? Or am I living generously? And that's where I'm having to ask myself, okay, I'm definitely not hoarding my wealth because I'm in debt now, big time, after buying this house. I mean, honestly, we were so blessed. When Nina's dad died this past year, he left us with a substantial sum of money. And we wouldn't have thought about buying a house in the market like it is now. But we were able to put down a decent deposit on it, and so we are so blessed by that. But at the same time, I have this new house, and I really have to stop myself. How can I be generous with this house? How can I use this for God's glory? How can I use this to please Him? Am I paying what I owe? Am I being fair in the way I pay people? I know some people that when they go out to eat, they feel like they're almost prideful of living a bad tip. Christians need to be generous. I'll just project that as my opinion. And maybe you're one of those that's not very generous with your tipping. But I think as a Christian, I want to be known as generous. I've heard the arguments. Well, I'm being a shrewd manager of my money. Well, God's generous, and I want to be like God. And so I want to be generous and give generously to people. I want people to know how much I appreciate them and do more than is expected, because that's what God does for me, doesn't He? He is constantly giving. This house is an evidence of that. It's an answered prayer, and I go, man, if I wouldn't ask for a house this nice. And so I have to go, God, you've given me so much, so what can I do now? I should be generous back. And being faithful stewards of our money, I think part of that is learning to live generously, not being miserly. We've almost sometimes, I've heard Christians use that. Oh, he's a penny pincher. He's shrewd with his money. Shame on you. You should be generous with your money. You should be wise with your money and how you do your finances. But if someone owes you money, I need to be paying them. I need to be generous with my money. I need to be generous with my finances with people. That's what Christians do. We're rich. Now use your money to glorify God. Otherwise, that doom is coming he's talking about in this text. So I live in luxury and self-indulgence. Again, I don't think it's wrong for us to be comfortable. I get in my car and I set the thermostat like I like it. When you get in the car, if you monkey with it, I'll let you monkey with it. I don't mind. But as soon as you get out of the car, I'm going to adjust it the way I like it, because I like to be comfortable. And there's nothing wrong with being comfortable. But at the same time, do I worship for comfort? Do I worship luxury? Am I wasteful in my resources that could be used to help people, that could be used to honor people? That's where I really have to stop and ask myself. My riches are supposed to be helpful to people, to honor people. If all I'm worried about is holding that money and getting comfortable, that's a problem. Do I use my money to take advantage of other people? Most of us have a lot of wealth. We live in houses that aren't made from the bush. And we drive a car, or we have food to eat. But do I take advantage of other people and fail to give to other people? And that's where when I stop and look at these questions, these accusations that James makes towards the people, I have to stop and go, I'm a rich man, but how am I using my wealth? Again, my wife and I were so excited about our new house. Yesterday we spent the day over there, and thankful to Bruce Bennett and Richard Foster and Cheryl Foster who came over and painted with us. I didn't paint on it. Actually, I got busy taking care of other things in the house. One of the bedrooms was pink and purple. I owned a house that had a pink and purple bedroom for 24 hours, not anymore. And blue and gray in another one. So they put down some paint for us. And we're looking forward to moving in. And honestly, after we get moved in and settled a little bit, we're going to invite everyone over to come celebrate our new house. We'll let you know, we'll have an open house for you to come on over and celebrate, because we want to use this house for God's glory. This is a gift He's blessed us with, and it's a rich gift. And when I take this in the heart, and I'm thinking that as we've been talking about, I was like, we just got to share this with the church. One of the things we really wanted in this house, can it have a room big enough that we can have 20 people, 30 people together? Because we want to have, if we need to have a big group in the house, we want to be able to do that. Does it have a backyard where the kids can go out and play? Even as a swing set, kids. I can't play on it. I mean, I can, but then you probably catch me once in a while. It's got a swing set that you can play on, kids, so come on over and play on a swing set. When we saw the swing set back there, we said, is that steady? And Shirley looked at us like, why do you care about a swing set? Because we work with young families all the time, and it'd be marvelous to let Grant come play on our swing set, right, Grant? Wouldn't it be fun to go play on a swing set right now? Yeah, that'd be cool. and so we want to use this for God's glory. But I also want you to ask your questions on these same questions to yourself. Because whether you are a homeowner or not, whether you're 100 years old or you are 12 years old, you're rich, aren't you? And how are you going to use your wealth? How are you going to use the things that God has blessed you with for God's glory? Are you going to use that wealth? Are you going to share it with other people? satisfied and live in luxury on the hill. If I were a rich man, the truth is, we are rich.